The china teacup slipped from my hands when Harold spoke those words. It shattered on my kitchen floor, just like my heart in that moment, the porcelain my mama had given me on my wedding day. "It's precious, Odessa. Been in our family 3 generations," she'd told me. And now it lay in pieces, like everything else. "I'm leaving you, Odessa. I don't love you anymore." Harold's voice was cold, distant, no hesitation, no tears. Just those words that cut through me like a knife. Before I go on, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I'd love to know who's out there, hearing this story with their heart. "What are you saying, Harold? How can you leave? Where are you going?" My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. "With Deborah. You know her? She's the new choir director at church. We've been seeing each other for 8 months. I stood frozen, staring at the broken pieces on the floor. At 70 years old, after raising 3 children, after following him through every promotion in his ministry, after giving up my teaching career for him, Harold was abandoning me for a woman 20 years younger. The air seemed to leave my lungs. Words failed me. "I've already spoken with the lawyer. You'll keep the house and receive monthly support. It's only fair," he continued, as if discussing the weather or utility bills. "The children already know." The children? Our kids were in their 40s, but to me, they would always be my babies. "What do you mean they know? You told them before. Telling me?" "I didn't want them hearing it from someone else, Odessa. Understand, this is difficult for everyone." Difficult! Difficult! I wanted to scream, to break something else, to hit him with my tired fists. But I didn't. Women of my generation, especially black women raised in the South like me, we didn't do those things. We swallowed our pain like bitter medicine. "Please leave," I finally said, with a dignity I didn't know I possessed. "Leave right now." Harold walked out of the kitchen, and I heard him going up the stairs. He already had his bags packed, of course. He had planned everything with the precision of a general. He'd always been that way, methodical even in breaking my heart. I sat down on a chair and looked out the window. The garden I'd tended for decades seemed to mock me with its vibrant colors. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. I was no longer the same. In just a few minutes, I'd gone from being Mrs. Johnson, the pastor's wife, to being... who? What remained of me after nearly half a century dedicated to a family that was now crumbling? I heard Harold coming down the stairs with his suitcases. I didn't turn to look at him. The front door opened and closed, and then silence. A silence as heavy as a tombstone. I spent 3 days without leaving my bedroom. My children called constantly. Michael, the oldest, wanted to come stay with me. Aaliyah, my daughter, called crying, saying she would never forgive her father. I asked them all to leave me alone. I needed to think, to breathe without it hurting so much. On the 4th night, I got up at 3 a.m. and went into Harold's study. His scent still lingered there, that mixture of aftershave and pipe. Tobacco. I turned on his computer. The password was the same as always, the name of our first dog and the year of our marriage. How ironic. I searched through his emails, through his documents. I found everything. The hotel reservations with that woman, the love messages, the retirement plans together. They had even looked at houses in Atlanta, all while I was planning our 48th wedding anniversary. I also found our bank accounts. Harold had always handled the money, telling me not to worry about these men's matters. I discovered we had much more in savings than he had ever let me believe. Much more, and half of it was legally mine. At dawn, when the first rays of sunlight came through the window, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay in that house full of memories, waiting for the pitying visits from my children, becoming the talk of the congregation, the poor, abandoned, elderly woman. No. I was worth more than that. I called Bernice, my only friend, who had dared to divorce years ago when all the rest of us criticized her for dishonoring her marriage. How wrong I had been back then. I hope you're not calling to comfort me, I told her when she answered. Odessa, Lord have mercy. I've been so worried. How are you? I'm going to sell this house, I said, surprising myself. And I need your help. The silence on the other end of the line made me fear the call had dropped. Bernice? I'm here, she finally replied. I'm just processing what you just said. Are you sure? More sure than I've ever been in my life. Harold can keep his memories and his choir director. I'm going to find something I lost a long time ago. What's that? Myself, Bernice. I'm going to find myself. 2 weeks later, my son Michael accompanied me to the notary's office. We had listed the house with a real estate agency, not Harold's friends, of course, and already had 3 offers. We would sell it for much more than Harold had estimated in his divorce documents. Mama, are you completely sure about this? Michael asked me when I signed the papers. His concern was genuine, I knew, but I also saw something else in his eyes. Surprise. He had never seen me make decisions like this. Son, I've been sure of very few things in my life. This is one of them. My daughter Aliyah offered to have me move in with her and her family in Philadelphia. My younger son James insisted I should buy an apartment near him in Washington, D.C. I thanked them both, but told them I had other plans. What plans, Mama? Aliyah asked, visibly confused. Where will you go? I smiled, feeling a freedom I hadn't experienced in decades. To Harlem. None of my children could believe it. Harlem was hours away from any of them. It was a neighborhood for artists, for young people, for cultural revival. Not for a 70-year-old black woman who had never lived alone. But Mama, you don't know anyone there, protested James. Exactly, I replied, feeling a genuine smile form on my lips for the first time in weeks. No one knows me there. No one knows I'm the abandoned wife of Reverend Harold Johnson. No one will look at me with pity in Sunday service. My children exchanged worried glances. To them, I had always been the mother who baked sweet potato pies, looked after grandchildren, and never contradicted their father. The woman now speaking to them, with determination in her eyes and plans of her own, was a stranger. It's dangerous for you to live alone at your age, insisted Michael. And what do you suggest? That I stay here, locked between these walls, waiting for death to come for me? Or that I become the grandmother living in the back room of your house, grateful for the leftovers of your life? My voice sounded harsher than I intended, but I couldn't hold back anymore. I've spent my entire life taking care of others. Now it's time to take care of me. The day I left that house where I had lived most of my adult life, I didn't look back even once. I left the photo albums, the memories, the decorations I had collected over decades. I only took some clothes, my personal documents, and a small quilt square that had belonged to my grandmother, who was born into slavery but lived to see freedom. The train to New York left early that morning. All 3 of my children and 5 of my grandchildren came to see me off at the station. They were all crying, except me. Inside, I felt fear, of course, but I also felt something stronger, hope. I'll visit you soon, I promised, as I hugged each one. Or better yet, you come visit me. Harlem is beautiful, you'll love it. We love you, Grandma, said Maya, my eldest granddaughter, hugging me tightly. You're so brave. No one had ever called me brave before. That word echoed in my head throughout the journey. Was I brave or just desperate? Maybe both. As the train sped northward, taking me away from the life I had known, I looked out the window. The landscape gradually changed. Buildings gave way, to open fields, then to hills, finally to mountains. Like my life, I thought, transforming completely. In that moment, with the morning sun filtering through the train window and warming my wrinkled face, I made a silent promise. This time, I would live for me. At 70, I was about to begin the greatest adventure of my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt my heart beating with anticipation, not fear. The woman sitting next to me looked at me curiously. "Going to visit New York, ma'am?" I smiled, feeling a strange peace. "No, I'm going to live there." "Do you have family waiting for you?" "No," I replied, surprising myself with the calmness in my voice. "I'm going to meet someone I lost a long time ago." "Who?" she asked, intrigued. "Myself." The train pulled into Penn Station late that afternoon. I stepped onto the platform with my suitcase, feeling the energy of New York City immediately wrapping around me like a vibrant shawl. The noise, the pace, the sheer aliveness of the place took my breath away. "First time in New York, ma'am?" the taxi driver asked as he loaded my luggage into the trunk. "First time alone," I replied, and something in those words made me feel a lump in my throat. "Where to?" I handed him a piece of paper with the address of the small apartment I had, rented online with my granddaughter Maya's help. It was a modest place in the heart of Harlem on Lenox Avenue, not far from the Apollo Theater, but still affordable on my budget. As the taxi drove through the city streets, I observed everything with new eyes. The towering buildings, the diverse crowds rushing along the sidewalks, the street vendors, the music spilling out from storefronts. New York seemed like another world, and I, at 70 years old, felt like a child on her first day of school, scared and excited in equal measure. "Here we are, ma'am," said the taxi driver, stopping in front of a 5-story brownstone painted a deep burgundy. "Need help with your luggage?" "Thank you, young man," I replied, noting how strange it sounded to call a man in his 50s young. But that's how we were raised, to respect men, even those younger than us. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs slowly, aware of my knee protesting with each step. The landlady, Miss Ella, a woman just a few years younger than me, was waiting with the keys. "Welcome, Mrs. Johnson," she greeted me with a smile that revealed a gold tooth. "Did you have a good trip?" "Yes, thank the Lord," I responded, following the habit of invoking the Lord in every sentence, as we'd been taught. The apartment was small, but bright. A living room dining area, a tiny kitchen, 1 bedroom, and a bathroom. The walls were freshly painted a warm yellow, and there was a small window that looked out onto the street below, where I could hear the rhythms of Harlem life. "It's perfect," I said, more to convince myself than Miss Ella. "The market is 2 blocks away, and Abyssinian Baptist Church is just around the corner. They have service at 8 and 11 on Sundays," she explained, correctly assuming that proximity to a church would be important to me. When Miss Ella left, I sat in the only armchair in the apartment and looked around. The reality of what I had done hit me suddenly. I was alone, in an unfamiliar city, hundreds of miles from my children and grandchildren. What was I thinking? Had I gone mad with grief after Harold's abandonment? The tears began to fall before I could stop them. I cried for my lost marriage, for my wasted youth, for the betrayal by the man I thought would be my companion until death. I cried until I was breathless, hugging myself in that borrowed armchair, in that strange city. That night, I barely slept. The bed felt enormous without Harold beside me. For 47 years, I had slept with the weight of his body near mine, with the sound of his breathing as a lullaby. Now the silence was deafening. At dawn, I got up and approached the small window. The sun was beginning to illuminate the brownstones across the street, and in the distance I could hear the sounds of the city awakening. I dressed carefully, combing my gray hair into a simple bun, as I always had. I put on my navy blue dress, the same one I had worn to my sister's funeral 3 years ago, and took my purse and my well-worn Bible. Abyssinian Baptist Church was larger than I expected, with a rich history that I would later learn was deeply intertwined with the civil rights movement. I entered just as the choir was beginning the first hymn. I sat in the last pew, observing the congregation. They were primarily people my age or younger, some families, some alone like me. I wondered how many of them had been abandoned, How many were widowed? How many had stories similar to mine? After the service, I remained seated while everyone filed out. I needed a moment more of peace before facing my new reality. A woman approached me. She was tall, stately, with perfectly styled silver hair and a purple suit so vibrant it seemed to announce her presence before she even spoke. "You must be new to the neighborhood," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Wilhelmina Tate, but everyone calls me Miss Willie." "Odessa Johnson," I replied, surprised by the approach. In my old church, no one spoke to strangers unless it was to recruit them for a committee. "Would you like to join us for Sunday dinner? Some of the senior ladies gather at my place after service." My first instinct was to decline. What would Harold say if he saw me socializing with strangers? But then I remembered. Harold was no longer there to judge me, to control me. I was free to do what I wanted. "Yes, I'd like that very much," I replied, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. Miss Willie's apartment was in a restored brownstone, just a block from the church. 5 other women joined us, all around my age, all welcoming me with genuine smiles. They didn't ask why I was alone or where I came from, and I silently thanked them for that. "First time in Harlem?" asked Gladys, a robust woman with bright eyes and hands that never stopped moving as she helped set the table. "I visited once many years ago with my husband," I replied, feeling how the word caught in my throat. "But it's my first time living here." "Harlem changes people," said Dorothy, the eldest of the group, with an enigmatic smile. "You come looking for one thing and find something completely different." "And what are you looking for, Odessa?" asked Miss Willie, looking directly into my eyes. No one had asked me that in decades. What was I looking for? Peace? Comfort? Escape from shame? Or something deeper? "I don't know," I confessed, surprising myself with my honesty. "Maybe a new beginning." "We all deserve second chances," said Miss Willie, and something in her gaze made me think she understood exactly what I was going through. Returning to my apartment, I felt different. The space no longer seemed so empty, so intimidating. I placed my grandmother's quilt square on the table by the window and smiled at it. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I asked aloud, and for the first time, since Harold left me, I truly believed it. In the following days, I established a routine. I would get up early, go to a morning prayer service, buy necessities at the market, and spend the afternoons exploring the neighborhood or reading by my window. On Sundays, I joined Miss Willie and her friends for dinner, and they gradually became my first friends in Harlem. It was Miss Willie who, 3 weeks after my arrival, made the proposal that would change everything. "Odessa, have you ever thought about doing something with your hands? Sewing, quilting, painting?" "I used to teach art," I replied, remembering the years before I married Harold, when I had taught at a small community college. "Before I got married." "Perfect," she said with enthusiasm. "I run a small arts program for children at the community center, and I'm looking for help. These young ones need to learn about their heritage, about the art that sustained our people through the hardest times. Would you be interested in working with me a few hours a day?" I was speechless. Work? I hadn't worked outside the home since I married Harold. He always insisted that a minister's wife should focus on the home and the church. Even when I wanted to return to teaching after the children were grown, he firmly opposed it. I don't know if I can," I stammered. "It's been many years since I taught, and I've never worked with small children." Miss Willie took my hands. Hers, despite her age, were firm and warm. "We all have to start somewhere, Odessa. Besides, it's not just about the money. It's about having something of your own, something no one can take away from you." Something no one can take away from you. Those words echoed in my mind all night. What did I have that was truly mine? My identity had always been tied to others, daughter of, wife of, mother of. Even my house, which I believed was ours for decades, turned out to be a possession that Harold could take from me at any moment. The next morning, I called Miss Willie. "I accept," I told her, with a determination I didn't know I possessed. "I want to work with you." "Wonderful," she replied, and I could imagine her smile on the other end of the phone. "Start tomorrow at 10. I'll expect you at the Harlem Community Arts Center. It's on 125th Street, near the Apollo." That night, for the first time since my arrival in Harlem, I slept deeply, without nightmares, without tears. And upon waking, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: excitement for a new day. The Harlem Community Arts Center was a vibrant, colorful building that seemed to pulse with creative energy. Murals depicting African American history adorned the exterior walls, and as I approached, I could hear the sounds of children laughing and music playing from within. When I entered, the receptionist, a young woman with elaborate braids and a warm smile, directed me to Miss Willie's classroom. I found her surrounded by art supplies, setting up easels for what appeared to be a painting class. "Odessa, you made it!" she exclaimed, embracing me as if we'd been friends for years. Right on time, like a true professional. "I was never a true professional," I clarified, confused. "Didn't you say you taught art? Then you are, even if you haven't practiced in years." Her words struck me forcefully. It was true. I had taught art, had even won a small grant for a community mural project, but I had never pursued my career seriously. Harold proposed marriage right after I graduated, and what was supposed to be a temporary pause became a permanent surrender. "Come, I'll show you around," said Miss Willie, guiding me through the center. The building was alive with activity. There were classrooms for various arts: painting, music, dance, theater, all designed to serve the community. In one room, elderly residents were working on quilting projects. In another, teenagers were practicing step dancing. The center was a testament to the rich cultural heritage of Harlem, and I felt a surge of excitement at being part of it. "Today, we have our elementary group," Miss Willie explained as we returned to her classroom. "Ages 7 to 10. They're working on a project about family heritage. I thought you could help them with their family portraits." "Family portraits?" I repeated, suddenly anxious. "I haven't painted in years, Willie." She looked at me with those knowing eyes of hers. "The hand remembers what the mind forgets, Odessa. Trust yourself." The children began arriving shortly after, a whirlwind of energy and noise. There were 12 of them, from various backgrounds, but primarily African American and Latino. They regarded me with curious eyes as Miss Willie introduced me. "This is Mrs. Johnson, children. She's an artist and a teacher, and she'll be helping us with our portraits today." "Are you as old as Miss Willie?" one little boy asked, prompting giggles from his classmates and a stern look from Miss Willie. "Marcus, that's not polite," she admonished, but I just laughed. "I might be even older," I replied with a wink, and the tension dissolved as the children laughed. As the class progressed, I found myself naturally falling into the rhythm of teaching. I moved from child to child, guiding their small hands, suggesting colors, encouraging their creativity. The joy of teaching, of passing on knowledge, came flooding back to me. It was like rediscovering a part of myself that had been locked away for decades. "You're a natural with them," Miss Willie observed during a brief break while the children's paintings dried. "They're responding to you beautifully." "I'd forgotten how much I loved teaching," I admitted. "How fulfilling it is to see a child's eyes light up when they create something." "It's never too late to reclaim what you love, Odessa," she said softly. "That's the beauty of life. It offers second chances, even when we think the story is over." That evening, as I walked home through the streets of Harlem, I felt a lightness in my step that I hadn't experienced in years. The neighborhood was coming alive with the evening rhythm, music pouring from open windows, people gathering on stoops, the smell of cooking wafting from apartments. It felt vibrant, alive, like I was beginning to feel inside. When I reached my apartment, the phone was ringing. It was Aaliyah, my daughter. "Mama, how are you? We miss you so much." "I'm good, baby. Better than I expected, actually," I replied honestly. I told her about the Community Arts Center and my first day teaching. There was silence on the other end of the line. "Teaching, Mama, at your age?" The tone of surprise, almost alarm, in her voice irritated me. It was the same tone Harold used when I suggested doing something outside what he considered appropriate. "Yes, Aaliyah, teaching. I'm not building skyscrapers or lifting heavy loads. I'm teaching art to children, something I always loved doing. But you don't need to work. Daddy left you the settlement, and we can help if you need money." "I'm not doing it for money, daughter," I explained, feeling my voice tighten. "I'm doing it because I want to, because it makes me feel useful, alive." Another silence, this one longer. Then a sigh. "If it makes you happy, Mama. I just worry about you. Living alone, now working. Aaliyah, I'm 70, not 105, and I'm in perfect health, thank the Lord. Remember your great-grandma Pearl? At your age, she was still running her seamstress business by herself. Times were different then, Mama." Yes, they were different. Women like me were expected to be satisfied with being wives and mothers, nothing more. But times change, daughter, and I'm changing with them. The conversation ended with tension, something rare between Aaliyah and me. We had always been close, perhaps because she, like me, had chosen to be a homemaker and full-time mother, or perhaps because I had raised her to do exactly that. I fell asleep thinking about how our decisions shape not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. Would Aaliyah have been different if she had seen me pursue my own dreams alongside caring for my family? The days at the Arts Center soon turned into weeks. I discovered I had a talent for connecting with the children, especially those who were shy or struggling. Miss Willie began assigning me more responsibilities, and eventually I was leading my own classes in basic art techniques and African American art history. The first time a parent thanked me for inspiring their child, I felt an indescribable emotion. Miss Willie gave me my first paycheck at the end of the month, and although the amount was modest, it represented something invaluable: my independence. One afternoon, while I was setting up for an adult evening class on Harlem Renaissance artists, the door to the classroom opened. A tall, distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair and warm brown eyes smiled at me from the doorway. "Excuse? Me?" he said in a deep, melodious voice. "I was told the Jacob Lawrence appreciation class would be held here." "Yes, that's right," I replied, feeling inexplicably nervous. "The class starts in 30 minutes. Are you registered?" "I am," he said, stepping into the room. "I'm Samuel Washington. I've been an admirer of Lawrence's work for years." "Odessa Johnson," I introduced myself, extending my hand. He took it, in both of his, the gesture warm and respectful. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Johnson. Do you mind if I help you set up? I came early on purpose." I found myself accepting his offer, and together we arranged the chairs, set out the art supplies, and placed reproductions of Lawrence's works around the room. Samuel moved with the ease of a man comfortable in his own skin, and his knowledge of art was impressive. "Are you an artist yourself?" I asked as we worked. "Just an appreciator," he replied with a smile. "I was a history professor at Howard University before I retired. Art has always been a passion, though never a profession." "Howard University? That's impressive." "Not as impressive as teaching these young people about their heritage," he said, gesturing to the children's artwork displayed on the walls. "I saw your class yesterday when I came to register. You're doing important work." His words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. Harold had never shown interest in my teaching or my art. He saw it as a hobby at best, a distraction from my real duties at worst. "Thank you," I said simply, unable to find more eloquent words. The class that evening was a revelation. Samuel was an engaged participant, offering historical context to Lawrence's Great Migration series that complemented my artistic analysis. After class, several students lingered to continue the discussion, and I noticed that Samuel waited patiently until everyone had left. "That was fascinating, Mrs. Johnson," he said as he helped me clean up. "Your insights into Lawrence's use of color and perspective were illuminating." "Please call me Odessa," I found myself saying, "and thank you for your contributions. The historical background added so much depth to our understanding. Perhaps we could continue this discussion sometime. Over coffee, maybe?" I froze, a paintbrush suspended in midair. Was he asking me out? Me? "I'm sorry if I'm being too forward," he added quickly, noticing my hesitation. "It's just that it's rare to find someone with your knowledge and passion for this subject." A voice in my head, sounding suspiciously like Harold, told me it was inappropriate, that a woman my age, recently divorced, shouldn't accept invitations from strange men, that people would talk. But another voice, stronger, clearer, reminded me that I no longer lived under those rules, that Harlem wasn't my old conservative congregation, that I was, for the first time in my adult life, completely free. "Yes," I said finally. "I'd like that." We agreed to meet at a small cafe near the Arts Center the following afternoon. As I walked home that night, I felt a strange fluttering in my chest, like a young girl anticipating her first date. It was ridiculous, of course. I was a 70-year-old woman with 3 grown children and 9 grandchildren. Yet here I was, smiling to myself in the darkness, looking forward to tomorrow. When I reached my apartment, the phone was ringing. It was Harold. My heart skipped a beat. "Odessa," said his voice, so familiar and now so strange. "How are you?" "Fine," I replied curtly. "What do you want, Harold?" "The lawyers sent me the final divorce papers. They need your signature." The divorce. Of course, despite everything. That had happened. A part of me still hadn't fully accepted that my marriage was really over. "I can mail them to you at— Where are you living exactly?" he asked, and I noticed a certain discomfort in his voice. "I'm in Harlem," I replied, savoring his surprise. Harold had always said Harlem was too radical and unsafe for his taste. "Harlem? What are you doing there?" "Living, Harold. That's what I'm doing. Living my life." There was a silence, and then I heard a female voice in the background. Her. The woman he had left me for. "I'll send you the papers," he said quickly. "Take care, Odessa." And he hung up, without waiting for my response. I stared at the phone, expecting to feel pain, anger, something. But all I felt was a strange sense of liberation. The divorce papers, which a few weeks ago would have devastated me, now seemed like just a formality, the final step in closing, a chapter of my life that no longer defined me. That night, I dreamed of Jacob Lawrence's vibrant paintings and warm brown eyes that looked at me as if they could see into my soul. The divorce papers arrived a week later. A yellow envelope, impersonal, with my name written in Harold's neat handwriting. I left it on the table for 3 days, not daring to open it. It wasn't fear that I felt, but a strange sensation of standing at the edge of a precipice, about to jump. It was Miss Willie who finally encouraged me to face it. "A piece of paper doesn't define your worth, Odessa," she told me as we shared tea after work. "Sign it, free yourself, and move on." On the 3rd evening, I opened the envelope. Legal documents, cold terms that dissolved 47 years of shared life. I signed on all, the lines marked with an X, sealing the end of my marriage with surprisingly steady hands. When I finished, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt as if I had removed a heavy coat that I had carried for too long. The next day, after work, I walked to the post office and mailed the papers back to Harold. As the clerk stamped the envelope, I thought about how different our lives were now. Him with his young lover, probably feeling rejuvenated. Me, in a new city, working for the first time in decades, discovering parts of myself that I never knew existed. "Are you all right, ma'am?" the clerk asked, perhaps noticing something in my expression. "Perfectly," I replied, and I meant it. As I left the post office, I saw Samuel standing across the street, looking at the window display of a small bookstore. He saw me and waved, immediately crossing toward me. "What a coincidence," he exclaimed with a smile. "I was just thinking about our coffee date tomorrow." "Still on, I hope?" I asked, feeling an inexplicable joy at seeing him. "Absolutely. Unless, well, would you like to get that coffee now instead? Or maybe an early dinner? There's a wonderful little soul food restaurant just around the corner." I found myself accepting without hesitation. The restaurant, called Mama's Place, was warm and inviting, with photographs of Harlem's history lining the walls and the smell of cornbread and collard greens filling the air. As we settled at a small table near the window, I realized this was my first dinner out with a man other than Harold in over 50 years. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Samuel proved to be an engaging companion. He told me about his 35 years teaching African American history, about his late wife Beatrice, who had been a civil rights attorney, about his 2 sons who were both doctors. He spoke with passion about his research on the Great Migration and the cultural renaissance it sparked in Harlem. "And you, Odessa, what brought you to Harlem?" he asked after sharing his story. I hesitated. Should I tell this stranger about Harold, about how my life had crumbled and how I was trying to rebuild it? "A new beginning," I replied finally. "After many years of being what others needed me to be, I decided to find out who I really am." Samuel nodded, as if he understood. "Perfectly. Life sometimes gives us second chances disguised as tragic endings," he said, and his words resonated within me. That evening marked the beginning of a friendship that would grow rapidly. Samuel came to the Arts Center regularly, sometimes to take classes, other times simply to help out. He showed me parts of Harlem I might never have discovered on my own. Tiny jazz clubs where legends had once played, historic brownstones where writers like Langston Hughes had lived, community gardens tucked between buildings. I, who had never had a male friend who wasn't my husband, discovered the pleasure of a friendship based on common interests and stimulating conversations. Samuel didn't treat me like a fragile old woman, nor as a maternal figure. He treated me as an equal, as an interesting woman whose opinions he valued. The gossip didn't take long to start. Miss Ella, my landlady, gently warned me that people were talking about my outings with the professor. Miss Willie, on the other hand, encouraged me. "Let them talk," she would say. "At our age, time is too precious to waste worrying about what others think." One afternoon, as we walked through Marcus Garvey Park, Samuel took my hand. The contact, so simple, startled me. I couldn't remember the last time someone had held my hand like that, with tenderness, asking nothing in return. "I'm sorry," he said, releasing me when he noticed my reaction. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "No, it's not that," I replied, feeling my cheeks flush. It's been a long time since anyone has touched me like that." Samuel looked at me with a mixture of understanding and sadness. "Loneliness can be more painful than any disease, isn't it?" I nodded, unable to speak. He had put into words exactly what I had been feeling. The loneliness I had experienced even while married, even surrounded by my family. That feeling of not being truly seen, of not being truly touched. "May I?" he asked, extending his hand again. This time, I took it without hesitation. We walked, like that, hand in hand like teenagers, for the rest of our time in the park. And although part of me felt ridiculous, an elderly woman with gray hair blushing because she was holding hands with a man, another part, stronger, felt alive, vibrant, complete. The rumor about my friendship with Samuel eventually reached my children's ears. It was Michael who called first, his voice tense with barely disguised concern. "Mama, Aaliyah tells me you're seeing a man." I'm not seeing anyone, Michael, I responded, irritated by his tone. Samuel is a friend. We have coffee, visit museums, talk. He's an educated, respectful man. And what do you really know about him? He could be anyone. A con artist, someone looking to take advantage of an elderly woman living alone. His concern both angered and touched me. My children had never seen me as a woman, only as their mother. The idea that I might have a romantic life seemed to deeply alarm them. Michael, I'm 70, not 15. I know how to take care of myself. It's not the same, Mama. You don't know the world as it is now. There are a lot of predators out there. And you think that I, at my age, can't distinguish between someone sincere and a predator? I asked, increasingly annoyed. I remind you that I raised 3 children, managed a household for decades, and now live alone in a new city. I'm not naive. The silence on the other end of the line told me my words had surprised him. Michael had never heard me speak to him like this, with that tone of authority. I'm just worried about you, Mama, he finally said, his voice softer. I know, son, and I appreciate it, but I need you to trust me, trust my judgment. If your father deceived me after 47 years together, believe me, I'm much more alert to the signs of deception now. Mentioning Harold was a low blow. I knew it, as soon as the words left my mouth. Michael still hadn't forgiven his father, and I had just reopened that wound. I'm sorry, I added quickly. I shouldn't have mentioned your father. No, you're right, Michael replied bitterly. If anyone has hurt you, it was him, not a stranger. After hanging up, I felt emotionally exhausted. Michael's call had made me question what I was doing. Was it really wise to allow Samuel to get so close to me? Was I ready to trust a man again, so soon after Harold's betrayal? That night, I didn't sleep well. Memories of my marriage mingled with images of Samuel, with Michael's warnings, with my own fears. At dawn, I made a decision. I would talk to Samuel and tell him we needed to distance ourselves, that our friendship was moving too quickly. But that day, Samuel didn't come to the arts center, nor the next day. On the 3rd day, worried, I asked at the hotel where he was staying. Professor Washington had to return to Washington, D.C. urgently, the desk clerk informed me. A family emergency. Did he leave any message for me? I'm Odessa Johnson. I'm sorry, ma'am. He left nothing. I left the hotel with a lump in my throat. Samuel had gone without saying goodbye. Perhaps he had sensed my indecision, my fear. Or maybe, as Michael had suggested, he had never been sincere with me. That afternoon, at the arts center, I couldn't concentrate on my work. The colors wouldn't blend right. My hands felt clumsy and unsure. Miss Willie noticed and sat down beside me. What's wrong, Odessa? You look sad. Samuel left, I replied, surprising myself with the sadness in my voice. Without saying goodbye. Miss Willie looked at me with understanding. And that hurts you? It shouldn't. I barely know him. Time doesn't determine the depth of feelings, Odessa. Sometimes we know someone for decades and never truly connect. Other times, it takes just a few weeks to feel we've found a kindred spirit. Her words made me reflect. Was that what Samuel meant to me? A kindred spirit who had arrived too late in my life? I was afraid, I confessed, of what I was feeling, of what my family would think, of trusting a man again. And now he's gone, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. Miss Willie took my hands, just as she had done that first day we met. Odessa, fear is natural. We all feel it. But at our age, what's worse? Taking a risk and maybe suffering a little, or not taking the risk and regretting it forever? That evening, as I returned to my apartment under the starry Harlem sky, I thought about Miss Willie's words, about how I had lived my entire life according to others' expectations. My parents, Harold, my children, society. About how, at 70, I was still afraid to live fully. When I reached my door, I saw an envelope on the floor. Someone had slipped it under the door. I picked it up with trembling hands and immediately recognized Samuel's elegant handwriting. The envelope contained a letter and an airplane ticket. My heart was racing as I unfolded the carefully folded paper. "Dear Odessa," the letter began in Samuel's distinguished handwriting. "Forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye. My son in Washington suffered a heart attack, and I had to fly back immediately. He is recovering now, thank God, but I will need to stay with him for a few weeks during his rehabilitation. I didn't want to leave without telling you what you have meant to me in this short time. At 72, I believed I had experienced all the emotions life had to offer, that after Beatrice, my heart would remain dormant forever. But then I met you, and something awakened within me. Your courage in starting a new life, your dignity in the face of abandonment, your capacity to open yourself to new experiences. All of this captivated me from the first moment. I'm not looking to replace your husband or to offer you false promises. I just want to share with you the time we have left, be it much or little. Enclosed, you'll find a ticket to Washington, D.C. It's for 1 month from now. Time enough for you to think it through. No pressure, no expectations. If you decide not to come, I'll understand perfectly. But if you do come, I'll show you my city, introduce you to my family, and we can discover together what this autumn of our lives has in store for us. With affection, Samuel." Tears were streaming down my cheeks when I finished reading. The ticket was real, an open passage to Washington, D.C., in my name. Samuel was inviting me into his world, offering me an adventure I never imagined I would live. That night, I couldn't sleep. 1,000 thoughts crossed my mind. What would my children think? Was I crazy to even consider traveling to another city? With a man I barely knew? What if it was all a fantasy, a mirage created by my loneliness? At dawn, I called Miss Willie. "I need to talk to you," I told her, my voice still trembling. "It's important." We met at our usual cafe. I showed her Samuel's letter and the ticket. Miss Willie read in silence, her expression changing from surprise to a broad smile. "Odessa, this is wonderful." "You think so?" I asked, surprised by her enthusiasm. I barely know him. It could be dangerous. Miss Willie burst out laughing. "Dangerous. Samuel, please, Odessa. I've seen how he looks at you, how he treats you. That man deeply respects you." "But my children, what will they think?" Her expression became serious. "Odessa, I'm going to tell you something I learned after my husband passed. Your children have their own lives. They love you, they worry about you, but in the end, you must live yours. They have decades ahead of them. Who knows? What if I regret it? What would you regret more? Going to Washington and perhaps discovering it's not what you expected? Or staying here wondering forever what would have happened if you'd had the courage to go?" Her words resonated deeply with me. Throughout my life, I had chosen the safe path. I had been the obedient daughter, the devoted wife, the sacrificing mother, always putting the needs and expectations of others above my own desires. And look where that had led me. At 70, abandoned by the man to whom I had dedicated my life. "I'll think about it," I told Miss Willie, though in my heart I already knew what I wanted to do. The following days passed in a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. The first thing was to talk to my children. I decided to do it in person, not over the phone. I asked them all to come to Harlem the next weekend. To my surprise, all 3 accepted immediately. Perhaps they had been worried about me all this time, waiting for an opportunity to check that I was okay. I received them in my small apartment. They were surprised to see how I had transformed it into a cozy home, with potted plants by the window, student artwork on the walls, books on African American history that Samuel had given me. "Mama, you look different," said Aaliyah, hugging me. "Younger," added James. "Harlem suits you." I served them coffee and sweet potato pie that I had baked myself. When we were all seated, I took a deep breath and told them about Samuel, about our friendship, about his invitation to Washington. The reaction was exactly what I expected: shock, concern, disbelief. "Mama, you can't be serious," exclaimed Aliyah. "Traveling to D.C. with a man you barely know?" "It's crazy," added James. "He could be anyone. How do you know his intentions? Are good?" Only Michael remained silent, watching me with an indecipherable expression. I let them express all their concerns, all their fears. When they finished, I took out of my pocket the photograph Samuel had sent me from Washington. Him with his son, a middle-aged man in a hospital room. I also showed them the Professor Emeritus card from Howard University that he had left behind in my apartment before departing. "Samuel is who he says he is," I explained calmly. "A retired professor, widowed, with 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. He's not a con artist or a predator. He's simply a good and lonely man, just as I am a good and lonely woman." "But, Mama," Aliyah insisted, "what need do you have to go so far? You could visit us more often, spend time with your grandchildren." "Aliyah," I interrupted gently, "I love all of you more than anything in the world, but I've already lived my life for family. First for my parents, then for Harold, then for you. Now, in these years I have left, I want to live it for me." "And if you get sick there?" asked James, always practical. "If you need something, you'll be alone in another city." "I won't be alone, son. I'll be with Samuel and his family. Besides, I'm not going to stay forever. It's just a visit, to see Washington, to see if what I feel for him is real or just an illusion." Michael, who had remained quiet the whole time, finally spoke. "I think you should go, Mama." We all looked at him surprised. "Michael, how can—" "You say that?" protested Aliyah. "Because I've never seen Mama like this," he replied, looking at me with a smile. "Look at her. She's radiant, determined. She's not the broken woman we saw when Daddy left. Harlem transformed her. Or maybe she transformed herself by coming here." His words filled my eyes with tears. Michael, my eldest son, so much like Harold in appearance but so different in spirit, was truly seeing me for the first time. "Besides," he continued, "we can always visit her if she decides to stay longer. Washington isn't that far." James and Aliyah exchanged looks, still not entirely convinced, but they no longer protested with the same vehemence. "Just promise us you'll be careful," Aliyah finally said, taking my hand, "and that you'll call us every day. And that if something doesn't go well, you'll come back immediately," added James. "I promise," I assured them, squeezing Aliyah's hand and smiling at James. That night, after my children had left, I sat on my windowsill beneath the Harlem stars. I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. My children would understand eventually, and if they didn't, they would have to respect it. It was my life after all. I took out my phone, and after hesitating a moment, sent a message to Samuel. "Dear Samuel, your letter moved me deeply. I accept your invitation. I'll see you in Washington in 3 weeks. With affection, Odessa." The response came almost immediately. Despite the late hour, "My dear Odessa, you've just made me the happiest man in Washington. I'll count the days. With all my affection, Samuel." The following weeks flew by. Miss Willie helped me prepare everything, from my wardrobe to closing up my apartment temporarily. My students at the Arts Center made me a beautiful card telling me they would miss me but were excited for my adventure. "You inspire us, Mrs. Johnson," wrote Shanice, one of my teenage students. "You show us it's never too late to follow your heart." The night before my departure, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't fear I felt, but an almost childlike anticipation. At 70, I was about to embark on the greatest adventure of my life. I thought about Harold, about how his abandonment, which at the time seemed like the end of my world, had actually been the beginning of my liberation. If he hadn't left me, I would never have found the courage to come to Harlem. I would never have discovered my passion for teaching again, never have met Miss Willie and my other friends, never have found Samuel. "Thank you, Harold," I whispered. In the darkness, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. The morning of my departure, Miss Willie and several of my friends from the Arts Center came to see me off. They hugged me, wished me luck, made me promise to send pictures of Washington. "I'll be back," I assured them. "Harlem is my home now, but I need to take this journey." "Go and live, Odessa," Miss Willie told me, hugging me tightly. "Live every moment as if it were your last." The taxi that would take me to the station arrived, punctually. As the driver loaded my small suitcase into the trunk, I looked one last time at my building, at the vibrant streets of Harlem, at the intense blue sky of a New York autumn. In that moment, I remembered something my grandmother had told me many years ago when I was just a girl. "Life, child, isn't measured by the years we live, but by the moments that take our breath away." For decades, I had forgotten those words, settling for a quiet existence without breathtaking moments. Now, at 70, I was ready to seek those moments, to truly live, not just exist. I got into the taxi with a smile on my lips. To Penny. "Station, please," I told the driver. "I have a train to catch." As the taxi pulled away through the streets of Harlem, I felt I was leaving behind not just a neighborhood, but all the limitations I had imposed on myself for decades. I was no longer Reverend Johnson's abandoned wife. I was Odessa Johnson, a woman who at 70 had discovered it's never too late to start living authentically. And as the morning sun illuminated the brownstones of Harlem behind me, my heart, filled with absolute certainty, the best of my life wasn't in the past, as I had always believed. It was right in front of me, waiting to be discovered. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our